Hello there, gents. Today we will be doing something special. And yes, don't worry, I will still suffer a lot. Today I thought we'll take back focus on Trailmakers and make probably the hardest possible build in the entire game. That's right, your boy will try to figure out how to make a custom tracking missile. So without further ado, welcome to the engineering class.
Helicopter!
So just so you know, I have absolutely no clue how this works, but I have a firm grip on what I need to do. I already know how to keep missiles in the air relatively well. Thank God. So we just have to figure out how to make the missiles roam, aka fly, while idle. So let's begin. So, starting with the locationing system. To make stuff easier, I am going to keep things at ground level for a bit. What we have here is our first sensor prototype. It's got 8 wheels, making it able to go literally at all directions. Nice. The first thing we'll do is wire all the side sensors with the wheels to roll in its direction. As you can see, As you can see, the sensor detects something in front of it, tells the motor to turn on, and the vehicle rolls towards us. Nice! And with just some minor adjustments, we can fix it on all sides. So, just before your head explodes, this might be a bit hard to catch up with. Here is a short briefing of what we're about to do. So what we've got is 2 outer sensors on each side of this cube. Wiring them to the motor and appropriate wheels, we can make it roll towards us if you step in the sensor's reach. I think you've already got that part. But we're about to add another thing. Roaming. Our future missile cannot stand still, as it is a missile, so it has to go automatically when idle. And normally, we will have just inverted the motor, so that once it gets input, it stops roaming. But the motor cannot be inverted, only a sensor can. So what we're gonna do right now is build a mechanism for when the outer sensor spots something and we have to halt our vehicle. And here is the design. It features one inverted distance sensor and a hinge with a part attached to it. The idea is that when the outer sensor spots something, they will move the hinge with the part in front of the inverted sensor, stopping its input for the motor, and effectively halting the vehicle. And gentlemen, this is exactly how our missile is going to work. While idle, it will roam forwards, and then once it spots something, it will launch itself toward a target. In theory, this is really everything you need to know about the missile system. But, without further ado, let's build the damn thing. So, after about 12 hours or so spent building and developing this thing, here is the design. I can already sort of predict your reaction. Anton, what the actual fuck is this cancer tumor? And for once, I have to agree. This definitely looks a bit overcomplicated. But, turns out, making the system work in the air is drastically much more difficult. For one main reason. There is no f***ing friction. That means that every move, every single adjustment has to be either calculated precisely or with a counterforce. And just before your head explodes again, allow me to explain. Firstly, to halt the vehicle, we can't just stop input to the jets, because of something I like to call air drifting. Basically, unless we halt it with a counterforce, our missile will just drift away. Secondly, aside from just fixing the roaming and detection, which is already painful enough, we have to figure out how to keep the thing absolutely straight and at the same altitude, so that our sensors don't mistake the ground for an enemy, basically swaying. And finally, not f***ing up which sensors gives input to which component. I mean seriously, holy shit, why is there so many components? So, you may be wondering again, Anton, how the fuck do you fix this? And that is a pretty great question. So, first up, and probably the most important, how the f*** does this thing stay in the air? Now, I pretty quickly realized that smashing an altitude sensor and wiring them to the gimbal jets and then calling it a day didn't really work out great. That is because the gimbal jets will rise, gain speed, and once it's reached its altitude it will stop, but the missile has gained enough force so it will kinda sorta jump over the limit. But by using my head and my imaginary schizo friends, I figured out that if we just slap 2 speed sensors on both ends of the contraption, we will get an exact altitude. Basically, by putting the speed trigger to the absolutely lowest points and wiring them, the vehicle will activate the gimbal jets by just the slightest downcrease of altitude, in this case the speed of falling down. Now, if that alone wasn't enough to give you a brain bleeding, that was absolutely nothing compared to the other problems I had. Now, the air drifting wasn't really complicated to solve, just really tedious. I have to calculate every f***ing adjustment. The swaying, however, was a f***ing menace. Basically, swaying is when the vehicle kinda tilts too much and the sensors react, causing the jet more input and even more swaying and effectively blowing up the missile. Now, how I fixed it was to align the jets, tasked to launch the thing towards the target, closer to the gimbal jets and adding stabilizing sensors if that wasn't enough. Another problem was the halting process of when the missile stops roaming. Basically, air drifting. I added some counterforce jets and a simple computer. Basically, to prevent it from braking too fast and flying backwards, not only has the outer sensor spot something for it to brake, but the missile has to have a roaming velocity of over 8 km an hour for it to activate the braking jets, set to a limited time. As I said before, this wasn't really hard. Now, there are a lot more stuff to it than this, but talking about it in absolute detail will take forever. All you really need to know is that the core has an inverted roaming mechanism, it has calculated counterforces, basically the jets you see everywhere, and it launches itself towards anything it sees. The missile is uploaded to the Trailmakers gallery, and it is slightly more simple than it looks, really. It's just a bunch of sensors connected to the right components.